Now, I normally don't talk about these type of things on my channel, but I feel the need to do so today. I've been on YouTube the past couple days. I haven't really been posting anything, mainly because I've been bothered. I've been kind of like, offended about some of the things that I've seen on YouTube. I try not to get bothered about this stuff, but when I see certain things and certain ignorance, it really rubs me the wrong way sometimes. And I noticed that Rags did a video on Black Lives Matter. Top Hats and Champagne did a video has done a couple of videos, I think, on Black Lives Matter, if I'm not mistaken. And both of them have said things that I thought were very, very ignorant. Now, I don't really see black YouTubers talk much about Black Lives Matter. Mainly the people that I've seen have been Caucasians, which is fine. You can, voice your opinions on it. But me being African American and me also being in the law enforcement field, studying my bachelor's in criminal justice, having a master's degree in crime and intelligence analysis, I feel like I am qualified to speak on this topic from both points of view. Now, Rags uses the quote that is on the Black Lives Matter website to somehow believe that Black Lives Matter people believe in killing police officers. The quote is from Assata Shakur, who was convicted of murder of a police officer back in the 70s. Now, you can believe what you want to believe about this case, but the facts are the facts. One thing that I understand is that people twist things in the media. I always go to the court documents myself. Now, if you actually look at the case with Assata Shakur, and I'm not trying to convince somebody that, she's not guilty or whatever, but if you look at the facts, she testified that both of her arms were raised when she was shot by the police officer that ended up dead. Now, the FBI did an investigation on this case, which is in the court documents, and they found that her hands were tested for gunshot residue. There was not gunshot residue on her hands. They tested each weapon that was recovered from that car. Her fingerprints were not on any of the guns in that car. A pathologist testified in court that there was no conceivable way that the bullets that Assata suffered in her body could have traveled over to the clavicle in her arm if it was down. So the pathologist that testified in this case even said that both of her arms had to be raised in the air for her to receive the wounds that she did. Now, Assata was a big-time activist at the time. This is in the 70s that we're talking about, people. Now, you can believe what you want to believe, but this is the 70s. This is where the civil rights movement, the 60s and 70s, this is at the time where police were involved with these discrimination cases. This was common. So believe what you want to believe about that case. Let's go back to the quote. This quote is a true quote. There's nothing wrong with this quote. The quote simply says, "It is our duty to fight for our freedom. It is our duty to win. We must love each other and support each other. We have nothing to lose but our chains." Now, this is a good quote. There's nothing wrong with this quote. I don't know how many times I have seen quotes from that people use that are from people such as Adolf Hitler. I've seen quotes that people use from Hitler. I do agree that this quote, her being convicted of the crime, I don't think that this was in good taste, and I don't think that this should be on the website, simply because you have to learn how to fight things in court, and when you lose, you face your consequences, because you are, you're given the opportunity to present yourself by your peers, which I'm sure her jury was probably all white, but I don't know.
Let's just progress. Black Lives Matter is, gosh, what's the most charitable way to describe Black Lives Matter? Black Lives Matter is a bully organization of frustrated, spoiled millennials and people looking for an anger outlet. It's a borderline terrorist organization that often spews hateful rhetoric and inspires murder on police officers.
You know, this all sounds too familiar. I remember this same rhetoric about the Black Panther Party. People said that the Black Panthers were violent, they were the black version of the Ku Klux Klan, all of these things, when actually none of them were true. The Black Panther Party legally obtained firearms. They walked kids to school. They provided lunches for kids. They actually never lynched anyone. The Black Panther Party never killed white people for being white. They never killed anyone. They were simply protecting their communities, and they only used violence when violence was unjustly brought to their community. Now fast forward to what he said about the Black Lives Matter group. He said that the Black Lives Matter group often spews hatred towards cops. Now I would ask Rags to provide the facts for this information. There have been over 2,000 Black Lives Matter meetings to date since its initiation, and there have been only a handful, and I do say this truthfully, there have only been a handful that have either turned out negative or violent out of 2,000 meetings. And unfortunately, those are the meetings that you see in the media, which would make it seem like these groups are these protests are always spewing hatred, which is not true. It's simply a lie, because I've been a part of several of these where there have been whites, blacks, Hispanics, Asians, Christians, Muslims, all of these different ethnicities involved in these meetings, and the majority of them are peaceful. So when you say things like they often spew hatred, what is often? Once or twice? Now let's look at it this way, so maybe Rags can understand. I can look up thousands of videos on YouTube where police officers have done things that everyone would agree that were against the law, that were violating people's rights, that were unjust, that were racist, that were sexist, that were just completely just violating just people's rights. We can all agree that there are thousands of videos on YouTube about cops doing outrageous things. But you know what people like Rags tell you when those things happen? You know what they tell you? You hear this? Well, you can't judge all police officers. You can't blame all police officers. Not all police officers are racist. Not all police officers are bad. Well, that police officer is a bad officer, but there's so many, the majority of officers are good officers. That's what they tell us. But when you get one idiot that says something in 2, maybe 3 videos of thousands of protests, when you get one stupid person or people that are saying stupid things at these protests, then all of a sudden the whole group is bad. Now all of a sudden they hate police officers. It's no different than what Donald Trump has said. And I'm sure Rags is probably a supporter of Donald Trump. Now, are all Muslims bad? Because a few people want to be terrorists and they want to kill in the name of Allah? Does that make all terrorists, all Muslims terrorists? KKK killed people in the name of Christianity. Does that make all Christians at that time, were they all racist? Huh? Were they all murderers? This is ridiculous that you can say, because you see 1 or 2 videos of people saying outrageous things, that Black Lives Matter leaders have came out and said, we do not support this. These are not our people. They come out and say it. Not people that sit back and entertain white supremacy. These people have came out and said, we do not support violence. We don't support the killing of cops. They've came out and said these things. But you will still say that those few protests that you've seen speak for the whole group. Now, let me just interject on what Top Hats and Champagne said. Top Hats basically, he co-signs with the stuff that Rag says about this. Now, Top Hats made a video about the Rated D not too long ago. And the Rated D in his video was basically saying that one of his points were, because Assassin's Creed was screwed up at launch on the PC, and it was so bad that this was one of the reasons that made console better, because he took and Top Hats gave the example. He said, so you take one game out of thousands and you say, oh well, this applies to all PC games. Well, Top Hats, this is exactly what you and Rags continue to do on this topic. You take one or two videos that you see on the internet about Black Lives Matter, and then you say this applies to all of the thousands of protests that they've done, or the majority. This applies to the majority. Nope. This is the group. You've seen the video, people. They're violent. They want to kill cops. This is the group. You saw the video. You saw the 2-3 videos for yourself. This is the group.
I have absolutely no love for Black Lives Matter. They are an awful organization. I have no time and no patience for groups of individuals who want to blame all the problems that they think they may or may not be facing on some boogeyman called white supremacy or systematic racism.
And this statement alone just further shows your ignorance on this topic. You're comparing white supremacy and systematic racism to the boogeyman. You're basically saying, oh, well, you're shrugging your shoulders and saying it doesn't exist, which is complete bullshit, and you know it.
Because they think it's much easier to blame something else for your problems instead of maybe the fact that, well, blacks in this country commit an insanely high amount of crime.
No. Well, I'll say that everybody commits a lot of crime because one crime is too many. But let's look at the facts. Whites commit 2 to 1 the amount of crimes in every single category except for murder. So when you look at rapes, aggravated assault and batteries, domestic, whites commit 2 to 1. When it comes to murders with minorities, the amount is virtually the same amount. Now let's look at some more facts. Whites commit 70% of the crimes in this country. Overall crimes, whites commit 70%. Minorities account for 30% of the crimes in this country. There are 60% of minorities in prison right now. 60% on 30% crimes. I'm hoping that you're following me, Rags. I want you to know that the facts are that minorities are 10 times more likely to be incarcerated than whites. That is a fact. 10 times more likely to be incarcerated on a lesser amount of crimes. You can't get past that. Minorities commit less crimes than whites, but they're 10 times more likely to be incarcerated. And you want to tell us that there is not a problem with systematic racism or oppression, whatever word you want to use.
That 73% of blacks are born out of wedlock. Blacks only graduate from high school at a rate of 69% nationwide. The fact that 93% of black homicide victims are killed by other blacks.
I have no idea what graduation rates and having kids out of wedlock have to do with anything. You have shown no facts to correlate what this has to do with anything, so I don't even know why I should even respond to this. But I'll go ahead and try. Now, I didn't know that you had to be married to have kids. I didn't know that everybody in this country believed in marriage. I thought that was part, of being part of this country, freedom to do what you wanted to do. Now, you're saying that basically, well, if you would have graduated high school, or if you wouldn't have, been born out of wedlock, we probably wouldn't have shot and killed you. So now we're victim blaming. We're telling the victims, or we're telling the families of these killed individuals, well, if you would have, if he would have graduated high school, or if you wouldn't have had him out of wedlock, maybe he wouldn't have been shot and killed. How does this, we've seen this type of victim blaming in rape cases, but I've never heard of it in this type of thing. We've seen it in rape cases. Well, if you would have worn a skirt that was a little bit longer, or, if you would have covered up your breasts just a little bit more, he probably wouldn't have raped you. And speaking of rape, Rags often says, well, show me cases of white privilege. Well, I can show you 3 in the past 3 months. We've had 3 white individuals that raped women. Raped. Okay. One of them raped 2 women. But 3 individuals that raped women. One of them was given 6 months. One of them was given, no time. The other one was given no time. And they were given parole. You know why? Because they wouldn't fare well in prison. Go to another case of a black football player recently who was convicted of raping a unconscious woman. He was given 15 years in prison. And I'm not saying that to say he shouldn't have got 15 years, because if you rape somebody, you deserve 15 years. The black guy got what he deserved. The problem is that the white people that did this to women, white women, if I'm not mistaken, where are those victims' justice? Explain why they don't get the treatment that they should get. So people that say, well, the black guy shouldn't have got, no, the black guy got what the hell he deserved. When you rape people, you go to prison, period. The problem is when white people do it, they're not held to the same standard in some cases. Now you say that 90% of blacks kill blacks. Well, Rags, you can point to that same statistic on any race. Almost 90% of whites kill whites. Almost 90% of Hispanics kill Hispanics. You know why? Because that's who you are associated with. Blacks associate with blacks in most cases. Whites associate with whites. It goes by people you go to church with, people you go to school with, people that are in your family. The majority of one's race kills their own race. That's a fact in every aspect.
The fact that 40% of cop killers are black, despite black males being 6.6% of the United States population.
These are the type of statements that I do not like. 40% of cop killers are black. Okay. Over what time frame? What year? Let me make a factual statement for you, Rags. 72% of cop killers are Caucasian. But that's for 2016. This year, 72% of the cop killers have been white. So when you make statements like this, you should say when, over what time frame. How long ago was it? Was it 20 years ago? Was it 30 years ago? Was it last year? Because this year, 72% of cop killers are white. I didn't watch all of Rag's video because I just simply could not stomach it. But I will say this in closing. Do I think the Black Lives Matter movement is perfect? No. No group is perfect. No group is perfect. But to generalize everybody in this group based off of dumb actions of a few people is very ignorant. And I could not just be silent on it. And I encourage other people in this community to speak out against this, because it's ridiculous to me how this individual who has such a big following can just spew the bullshit and basically say, well, blacks are being treated the way that they're being treated because of them. It's disgusting. And you will never get support from me. Ever. Ever again.